Good day and welcome to our latest weekly wrap from Rand Swiss. This week we're going to cover, as usual, what's happened in the week and what you might need to know for next week with regards to investing. So we had earnings season kick off with a bang last week or so. This week we had a number of big companies coming out with results. Apple, Google, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta all reported results. In terms of numbers coming out, they weren't too bad. There's some disappointments came through, for instance, with regards to YouTube for Alphabet was a bit disappointing. The market expected like 3% growth rate in terms of revenue. They got 14%. But there does seem to be a bit of a slowdown happening in the advertising space. For instance, Meta, Facebook, kind of beat market expectations, but they also didn't see like spectacular growth. I think it was 7 or 8% growth in terms of revenue. Snap mentioned revenue was under pressure as well because of advertising. Twitch changed some of the rules regarding how they remunerate creators because they also are seeing revenue issues with advertising coming through. So there may be something happening in advertising that we are seeing the first signs of at the moment, but it does seem to indicate that that particular part of the business is, or the economy is under a bit of pressure. Apple's results were reasonably good. The market initially liked it, but then it's come down a little bit since then. Amazon results also not bad at all. Microsoft did very well in terms of its results. The market really liked them. Microsoft is one of those, it's like the dark horse in the tech space. I mean, think about it. Microsoft buys companies, it was gaming companies, LinkedIn, so on. It's operating in multiple markets. It's operating, virtual monopolies and things like Windows and etc. But nobody's talking about Microsoft as an issue. I mean, Twitter gets more press than Microsoft does. Twitter is a vastly smaller company. It's like a fraction of Microsoft, a few percent the valuation of Microsoft. But Microsoft gets a lot more coverage, Twitter gets a lot more coverage. Microsoft basically just skates by. People talk about acquisitions from various companies out there. Nobody talks about Microsoft acquiring a major gaming company or LinkedIn and that kind of stuff. So Microsoft results are reasonably good. Generally, I have seen the big tech companies under pressure, but they are nowhere near as far down as the growth tech companies. Some of the, I think the big ETF, ARK ETF is down like 70%, which is a huge pullback from where things were. And for a kind of geared kind of ETF, that's a very big change. We are looking at maybe opportunities here to buy into some of these things, especially in the growth sector of tech. I do believe that if you look back over history, buying into the dips has been by far the most profitable strategy you can use. If you still believe that technology is going to continue as it has in the last couple of decades, if you look at the kind of advances happening in like things like DALL-E, GPT-3, self-driving vehicles, biotech, etc. I have an article out on that at the particular moment. Right now is an opportunity to buy in as opposed to just basically being, a sell and wait for a recovery kind of time period. We also had US GDP numbers coming out recently. The US basically contracted in the first quarter. This was a bit disappointing. What really pushed things is negative. According to the stats that came out, was that a lot of imports. The US was importing quite a bit. Exports were under a great deal of pressure. So it would seem that the US is not the only economy in the world that's slowing down. If they aren't able to export as much as they normally did, that could be a signal that we are seeing the world slowing down. At the same time, there is indications that one of the reasons the US can't export is because it's not profitable to actually ship stuff out of the country. There is a big discrepancy between shipping things into the US versus ship them out. A lot more profits of shipping in than for shipping out, which could indicate that maybe some shipping companies are not actually fully trying to extract their outward bound cargo as much as they could be. They are basically just getting stuff into the country and getting out as quickly as possible to bring more stuff in because that's where the money is to be made. That being said, if the US is slowing down, like I said, over 1%, I think less than 10% of economists predicted that there'd be a negative number. So this was a very big surprise. At the same time, the market did not react very negatively to it. It was, in fact, a very positive surprise for the market. The market went up quite strongly because of it. A couple of reasons could be for this. Firstly, they may believe that the fact that there's a lot of imports coming through as opposed to, for instance, other sectors slowing down dramatically could be an indicator that this is more temporary. Another factor could be the fact that we are seeing the possibility of rate hikes, really coming into play in the next little while. And the hope is that, if there is slow growth in the US, it would reduce the chance of more rate hikes, reduce the size of these rate hikes and the frequency of them, which also would be good for the market. So that could be the reasoning. So it's a case of good news being bad news and bad news being good news in the market at the moment. We need a few more data points to justify that. We'll probably get them in the next week or so, but I think that is something to be really looking carefully at. If interest rates are going to be playing the big part what's going forward, then you could be in an easier situation with high unemployment. Slower growth tends to actually be good for the market because it reduces the chance of rate hikes, and therefore the market likes it. Other big news of the week, the rand continues to weaken. We got close to 16 to the dollar. That's quite a shift from a few weeks ago when we were like 14.50. What triggered this was a couple of things. Of course, the riots, the flooding in KZN was a big problem. The port is affected. At the same time, we also saw load shedding on level 4 for a period of time being announced. But since the load shedding has ended, apparently the port situation is clearing up quite nicely. The rand, however, remains quite weak. Commodity prices are slightly lower than they were in certain cases a couple of weeks ago, but still I would think that you would have anticipated a bigger recovery in the currency, considering just where it was before it was triggered by these events. If the currency remains where it is, it would be a bit of an issue because it's a bit of weakening coming through that could affect, for instance, inflation readings, could affect balance payments, which obviously would have an impact on terms of the market. And one final thing, just to end up the week. There was a report from NBC in the US regarding US jobless claims. Now, I don't know how much validity we're going to put into this, but apparently, according to NBC, which is a very respected news outlet in the US, there apparently was a great deal of fraud. It continues to be a great deal of fraud happening around the jobless claims, in the US. There's been, according to them, as much as half of the jobless claims since the start of the pandemic have been fraudulent. Often, not even by Americans, by foreigners that have used American security ideas, etc., to defraud the US government of what is possibly hundreds of billions of dollars. But from our point of view, what really matters is the fact that if this is the case, then some of the weird jobless claims numbers we've been seeing, might make a bit more sense. If, for instance, right now there's a crackdown and people are less likely to, be engaging in this kind of fraud, that could explain why we saw jobless claims come out this week much lower than anticipated. At the same time, we saw the unemployment, so the economy basically shrink. We would not anticipate normally a shrinking economy and a small unemployment claims number, but if there is been a huge amount of fraud in unemployment claims, that could explain some of the weirdness that we've been seeing regarding US unemployment or jobless claims numbers and what's actually happening in that economy. Okay, that's us for this week. Have a great long weekend, and I'll speak to you guys again next week. Cheers.